Unfaithfulness. I did not mean for my life to be known, understood, and contemplated by a single moment, yet it is. That eventide I stood upon the roof. The evening his eyes fell upon me. And that night desire drowned out wisdom. That was the night history has marked for me, and that one word that still follows me like a faithful shadow. Unfaithfulness. I was a wife. My husband Uriah was no common man, but a righteous and loyal soldier. He loved me with the quiet strength of one who stands unshaken by the noise of the world. His loyalty was not only to me but to Israel, and above all to the Lord God and his king, David. I knew it. I saw it each time he returned from battle, blood-stained yet unswerving, bowing his head in prayer before he even set aside his armor. And yet, when the moment came, I did not remember his devotion. I remembered only my loneliness and my longing. The king had summoned me, and who could refuse a king? But in truth, it was not only his power that overcame me. It was my own heart, soft with desire, weary with waiting, and unguarded against temptation. I crossed a line not with my feet, but with my soul. I stepped away from the shelter of covenant love and into the moment of stolen passion. With that single step, the course of many lives changed. It is easy to blame David. Yes, he bore the greater weight, the authority, the call to righteousness as shepherd of Israel. But my unfaithfulness was my own. I did not resist. I did not cry out. I did not turn my heart heavenward. In my silence, I became a participant. What is unfaithfulness, if not forgetting love, forgetting covenant, forgetting that the Lord's eyes see all, even what is done in secret? It is a quake of the soul, a tearing away of trust. And once trust is torn, it bleeds into every corner of life. My unfaithfulness cost Uriah his life, for David sought to cover our sin with blood. My unfaithfulness cost my child his breath, for the Lord's judgment fell heavy upon our house. And my unfaithfulness cost me my peace, for even when forgiveness came, memory never left. I live now as queen, mother of Solomon, ancestor of kings yet unborn. The Lord, in his mercy, wrote my name into the story of redemption, even into the lineage of the Messiah. But mercy does not erase memory. When I close my eyes, I still see Uriah's face, faithful and unwavering, while mine bows with shame. Unfaithfulness. That is the word etched into my soul like a scar. Not because I am forever condemned, for I know his mercy has lifted me, but because I will never again forget how frail the human heart can be when it strays from the God who loves us. The temptation. Temptation does not always come out loud like a roaring lion. Sometimes it comes softly, quietly, like a breeze at dusk that brushes against the skin and whispers, "Why not?" That is how it came to me. I did not seek it. I was only bathing, only washing myself in the privacy of my quarters. But temptation is not only in what is seen, but also in what is allowed to remain within. A gaze from a distance turned into a summon, and though I might have resisted, though I might have spoken words of refusal, my heart wavered, and that wavering was the opening temptation needed. I wish I could say that I was strong, that my covenant with Uriah shielded me like a wall. I wish I could say that I thought of the Lord's commands, that my heart trembled at the thought of betrayal. But temptation does not speak of consequence. It speaks only of the present moment, painting desire in gold and hiding the shadows beneath. In that hour, temptation told me I was seen, chosen, desired, and I listened. It is not sin to be tempted. I know that now. Even the righteous are tested by the lure of what is forbidden. But the danger lies in entertaining temptation, in letting it rest upon the heart like a guest welcomed at the table. I lingered in its company. I allowed the thought to become a longing, and longing became an act. The bitter truth is that temptation never gives what it promises. It offered me intimacy, yet gave me isolation. It offered me delight, yet delivered grief. It offered me life, yet demanded death. The death of Uriah, the death of my child, the death of peace within my soul. What a cruel master temptation proved to be. Even now I look back and wonder, what would have happened if I had spoken one word? No. What if I had fled as Joseph fled from Potiphar's wife? What if I had remembered my vows, remembered my God, remembered my husband's face? But temptation thrives on forgetfulness. It clouds the mind, blinds the eyes, and numbs the conscience. I have tasted its sweetness and found it bitter. I have learned that to stand against temptation, one must not only flee from it, but run into the arms of God, for only His presence is strong enough to silence its lies. I know the Lord has forgiven me. He has turned ashes into something redemptive, for from my womb came Solomon, and through him the line of Messiah. Yet forgiveness does not erase the memory of my weakness. That is the thorn I carry, the reminder that I am dust without His Spirit, a fragile heart prone to stumble when temptation knocks. So I whisper now to the generations that follow, do not trust temptation's promises. They are empty. Resist early, resist quickly, resist with prayer. For once its voice is welcomed, it is far harder to silence. The summon. I still remember the sound of footsteps that night. Messengers from the palace came to my door, their faces stern, their voices carrying the weight of command. The king has summoned you. What is a woman to do when a king calls her name? He was David, the shepherd anointed, the warrior who slew Goliath, the sweet psalmist who calmed troubled spirits with his harp. He was Israel's beloved king, the chosen one of God. Who could stand against him? Who could refuse him? Yet though his summon carried power, it was not without my choice. My feet moved, my silence consented, my heart, unguarded, yielded. The summons of David was not only an order. Maybe God was proving me, and I failed. I reasoned within myself there was no escape, that I had no voice. For I did not know why He called me for. Perhaps I imagined He was just calling me for an errand, or to convey some news about my husband far away at war. Perhaps I could have spoken words of plain refusal. Perhaps I could have fled into the shadows, as Ruth once clung to integrity, as Esther later would risk her life for others. Instead, I let the weight of his authority press me into compliance, when the true weight should have been the fear of the Lord God. That night changed everything. The summon drew me from my home into a chamber heavy with silence and desire. I walked as one caught in a snare, yet there was also a strange allure. To be chosen by a king, is that not what many would envy? Yet what seemed like honor became a chain, and what appeared like intimacy became entrapment. When I recall David's summon, I do not remember only the call of the king. I remember the silence of my own soul. I remember how I quieted the whisper of conscience, how I allowed the command of man to be greater than the command of God. That was the true abiding grief. Much later, after death had entered our home, after the child we conceived was taken, after tears had carved lines into my face, I thought often of that first moment. If the summon had never come, Uriah might have lived. My child might have lived. My name might not have been stained. But the summon came, and I answered, and the ripple spread until it touched lives far beyond my own. Even now, I wonder, did David weigh the cost as he sent for me in scales of justice? Did he know that his desire would lead to bloodshed, to shame, to judgment upon his house? Or was he too blinded by passion, deaf to the warnings of the God to whom he once sang in holiness? David's summon will always echo in my memory, not only as the call of a king, but as the moment where I surrendered the voice of righteousness to the weight of desire. And yet even in this, the Lord has shown himself greater. For though a man's summon led me to sin, God's summon still came to me, a summon to repentance, to mercy, to be written into his greater story. But if I could whisper back through time to myself on that night, I would say this: never ever answer the summons of any man when it pulls you away from the command of God. The silent consent. There are times when sin is loud, spoken in words of deceit, shouted in acts of violence. But there are also times when sin is silent, when it enters not through action, but through absence. My silence that night was such a sin. It was silent consent. When David's messengers came, I said nothing. When he summoned me into his chambers, I offered no protest. When his hand reached for me, I did not resist. My lips never formed the word no, though my heart surely trembled. Was I afraid? Yes. Did I feel powerless? Perhaps. But fear is not righteousness, and powerlessness is not innocence. My silence spoke, and what it said was permission. I often wonder, if I'd cried out, would it have changed anything? If I had resisted, would the King of Israel have turned away? Or would the weight of that refusal crush me still? I do not know, but I know this. By remaining silent, I surrendered not only my body, but my voice, the very voice God gave me to speak truth, to defend righteousness, to cry out against sin. And in surrendering it, I became part of the act I always regretted. Silent consent is a betrayal of one's own soul. It is the moment when you watch a line being crossed and do not move to stop it. It is when you see the fire kindling and say nothing until it consumes all. My silence was not neutral. It was participation. It gave room for sin to breathe, for desire to grow, and for covenants to be broken. This is the regret I carry most often in my quiet hours. For had I spoken, even if my words were crushed broken, I would have been innocent before the Lord. But my silence left me guilty, not only in David's act, but in my own. That silent consent was not only the sin of one night, it is a danger for all hearts. How many suffer because others remain silent? How much injustice grows because voices are withheld? How often do we watch wrong unfold and excuse ourselves by saying, "It is not my place to speak"? I know too well the cost of that silence. And yet, the Lord has not left me voiceless forever. Out of my brokenness, He has given me a voice to instruct my son Solomon, to shape the wisdom that would one day flow from his lips. It is His mercy that the woman who once stayed silent in sin would raise a son who would write, "Open your mouth for the mute, defend the rights of the poor and needy." Still, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the echo of words I never spoke, the protest that died on my tongue. My silence still haunts me, but I have learned that God's grace is stronger than my silence. He has spoken mercy over me, and His voice will always be louder than the consent I failed to withhold. Innocence lost. There is a heavy loss that lingers when innocence is gone. It is not only the memory of sin, it is the absence of what was before. Once lost, innocence does not return. It is like a vessel cracked. It may still carry water, but never without the memory of its cleaves. Before that night, my heart was undivided, unshadowed. My love for Uriah was steady and pure, my devotion to God untroubled. My days were simple, tending home, fulfilling law, living quietly as any other wife in Israel. But innocence is fragile, and one act, one choice, one silence, one yielding can strip it away forever. When I look back, I see myself differently. I was not the same Bathsheba after that night with David. A veil had fallen, and behind it lay guilt, secrecy, and the weight of a hidden life. Even when no one else knew, I knew. And that knowledge changed me. My steps slower, my laughter absent, my prayers heavier. Innocence was gone, and in its place was a hollow I could not fill. The child I bore was marked by its shadow too. Each time I felt him stir in my womb, I thought of the price of lost innocence. And when he was taken from me, my grief was doubled, not only for the life gone, but for the reminder that sin does not leave us unscarred. What began in utter secrecy ended in open mourning, and I could not return to the woman I once was. Lost innocence is not only about the past, it reshapes the future. I entered David's house, not as a bride adorned with purity, but as a woman marked by scandal. Though God in His mercy made me queen and mother of Solomon, though He brought good even out of my shame, the memory of lost innocence remained. It whispered to me in the night. It lingered in the eyes of those who remembered the tale, and it weighed upon me each time I prayed to God for forgiveness. Yet even in the depth of this regret, I learned something of God's heart. Innocence once lost cannot be restored by human hands. But God does not leave His children clothed only in their shame. He offers something greater than innocence. He offers redemption. Redemption does not erase the past, but it transforms its meaning. My innocence was gone, yes, but God's mercy clothed me in something stronger, His forgiveness. Still, I mourn what was lost. I mourn the purity of heart I once carried, the unstained love I once offered my husband, the unbroken trust I once had in myself. These cannot be reclaimed, but I have learned to bring even this morning to the Lord, and He in His tenderness has taught me this: innocence once lost may not return, but His grace is enough to cover me, to heal me, and to make me whole. So I live not as the woman I once was, but as the woman He is remaking me to be. And though I carry the ache of lost innocence, I also carry the hope of His unfailing love. Uriah's death. The news came to me as though it were any other report from the battlefield. Messengers do not carry the weight of their words, they only deliver them. Yet when the words reached my ears, they tore right through me like a sword. Uriah the Hittite is dead. I had known death lingered close to him always. He was a man of war, a soldier of unshaken loyalty. He lived with his life always in danger, his breath always one battle away from ending. But his death was not like the deaths of other men. His fall was not that of a soldier against the enemy, nor the noble end of one who fought for Israel. His death was betrayal. His death was arranged. His death was the price of my sin and David's cover. I cannot describe the weight of that knowledge. To grieve a husband is grief enough. But to grieve a husband knowing that your silence, your presence, your choice made you part of his death, that was grief multiplied beyond measure. Uriah was innocent, loyal to his king, loyal to his brothers in arms, loyal to me, his wife. He had slept outside his own home so that he would not dishonor the code of the battlefield. He carried righteousness in his very being, while I carried within me the seed of betrayal. I can still see his face, his eyes steady, unwavering, as though they gazed always at something beyond this world. He deserved honor, yet he was undone by treachery. He deserved life, yet he was handed over to be slain by the very one who should have protected him. The king he trusted, and the man who wanted a secret buried. And I, though my hand had not risen to strike him, though I did not give the order, became a silent witness to the plot. Uriah's death lives in me like a haunting echo of untamed melancholy. It is not just the loss of a husband, but the loss of my own self, my integrity, and the shattering of vows spoken before God. When I laid his memory in the grave, I buried a part of myself with him. And no crown upon my head, no palace chamber, no son born to me has ever fully lifted that weight. And yet, in this valley of regret, the Lord did meet me. He did not hide his eyes from my shame, but neither did he leave me in it. His prophet's words pierced the palace and named the sin. His judgment was fierce. The child the king and I conceived in sin did not live. But in time, his mercy was also fierce. For from the ashes of that loss, he gave me Solomon, a son beloved of the Lord, destined for wisdom and peace. Still, when I whisper in the silence of night, I do not first remember Solomon's laughter or the honor of being queen. I remember Uriah, faithful Uriah, who never failed me, though I failed him. His death is the sharpest thorn in my heart, and though I know God has forgiven me, I carry the memory as a scar that will never fade. The guilt. Guilt is a heavy garment, And once it is draped across your shoulders, it clings to the skin. It follows you into silence, into the stillness of night, into the moments when no one else is watching. I have worn it, and though the Lord has forgiven me, I knew its weight too well. After Uriah's death, after the child was gone, after the prophet's voice had thundered judgment in the halls of the palace, guilt lived inside me like a companion I could not cast away. At first, I tried to quiet it. I told myself I had no choice, that a king's command leaves no room for a woman's refusal. I told myself I was powerless, swept along by the will of another. But guilt has a way of piercing through excuses. It whispered, "You were not silent by force. You were silent by choice. You did not resist. You did not cry out." And though I tried to drown that whisper with reasoning, it always rose again. Guilt is different from shame. Shame is how others see you. Guilt is how your own soul sees itself. I could hide shame behind royal robes, behind the dignity of being queen. But guilt, I carried it even when no one looked at me. I carried it when I touched Solomon's face, knowing his life was a gift of mercy after another life had been taken. I carried it when David sang psalms in the night, his voice trembling with repentance, reminding me how both of us had sinned. There were nights when guilt pressed so heavily that I felt my prayers falter before they reached heaven. How could I, who had betrayed a righteous husband, who had stood silent as blood was spilled, who had cradled a child marked by judgment, how could I speak to the Holy One of Israel? And yet, in that very brokenness, I learned something about it. When guilt drives you to God, it can become the doorway to grace. I remember the day Nathan spoke to David, telling him of the rich man who stole the poor man's lamb. The words pierced my heart too. For was I not that lamb, taken though I belonged to another? And was not Uriah the poor man, stripped of what was most dear? In that moment, guilt burned within me like fire. But fire, though it consumes, can also purify. In time, I began to see guilt differently, not as a chain meant to keep me in despair, but as a reminder of how desperately I need God's mercy. Guilt left its scar, yes, but it also carved into me a deeper humility. I know now that I am not sustained by my own righteousness, but by His endless compassion. Even still, there are moments when memory stirs and guilt returns like an old ache in the bones. But I do not let it drown me anymore. I lift it up to the one who bore all guilt upon his shoulders, and in his presence I find rest. The shame. If guilt is the weight upon the soul, shame is the gaze of the world pressing against your skin. Guilt whispers in secret. Shame shouts in the open. I have known them both, but shame has a way of staining even the purest garment, even years after the act is done. When I walked through the streets after Uriah's death, I could feel eyes on me. Some pitied me. Some whispered about me. Some turned their faces away. Few dared to speak, but I saw it in their looks. Suspicion, judgment, curiosity. They saw a widow, yes, but they also wondered. The timing of it all, the king's swift marriage to me, the child growing in my womb. Whispers have a way of carrying themselves, And though no words were spoken to my face, shame crept into my heart. Shame is a mirror that reflects not who you truly are, but who others believe you to be. And when you look too long into it, you begin to believe it yourself. I began to see myself not as Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, wife of Uriah, beloved of the Lord, but as Bathsheba the fallen, the stolen, the tainted. Shame names you by your sin and not by your soul. Even within the palace, I felt its presence. Servants would bow, yes, but sometimes their eyes lingered too long. Did they know? Did they guess? Did they whisper in the shadows of the hallways? I could not silence such questions. Shame grows loud in the silence of unanswered doubts. And yet, shame also has a way of isolating you from the very one who longs to draw near. I felt unworthy to lift my voice to heaven. How could the Lord look upon me? How could the Holy One, before whom angels cover their faces, hear the prayers of a woman who had been part of such darkness? Shame convinced me to hide, as Adam and Eve once hid among the trees. But the Lord does not leave his children in hiding. Through the years, I came to see that he does not despise the broken, nor does he turn his face from the shamed. He takes what is despised and calls it chosen. He takes what is tainted and makes it holy. He took me, Bathsheba, known more for my shame than my name, and placed me in the line of his Son, the Redeemer of all mankind. That is grace that shame cannot silence. Still, I confess, shame has never fully left me. Even now, when I hear my name upon the lips of others, I sometimes wonder if they remember me only for my fall. Yet the Lord remembers me differently. He remembers me as forgiven, restored, and woven into his story. And if his memory is grace, then shame, though it lingers, had no power to destroy me. The consequences. Sin never stays still. It does not sit quietly in a corner, hidden away from the world. No, it grows. It spreads. It takes root like a weed, choking out life around it. I learned this bitterly, for the consequences of one night's surrender did not end in secret. They spilled into every chamber of my life, into every breath of my being. At first it was fear. Fear that the contours of my body would reveal what I had done. Fear that whispers in the court would rise like smoke and choke me. Fear that Uriah would know. Fear that God had already turned his face from me. I thought consequence might come in shame alone, but sin is never so small. Then came the letter, David's command. Uriah sent to the front lines, abandoned in the fiercest of battles. And when the report returned, when I was told he had fallen, I wept as a widow. But deeper than widowhood was the knowledge that my husband's blood had been tied to my sin. That was consequence in its cruelest form, the loss of a righteous man to cover the wrong of the unrighteous. But consequence did not end there. When the child was born, frail and sickly, hope still flickered in me. Perhaps the Lord would let him live. Perhaps mercy would shield him from judgment. But for 7 days, I held him in trembling arms, watching life slip away with every shallow breath. 7 days of fasting and prayer, 7 days of David prostrate on the ground, 7 days of waiting, and then silence. The child was gone. That tiny life bore the price of our rebellion. And my arms felt hollower than death itself. Consequence walked with me long after that. In the glances of women in the court, in the unease of those who dared not speak aloud what they suspected, in the heaviness that hung over David's house. Even when joy returned, even when Solomon was born, the shadow of consequence lingered. For Nathan the prophet had spoken truly, the sword would never depart from David's house. And I lived to see that word fulfilled. Amnon's violation, Absalom's rebellion, blood between brothers, grief upon grief. Consequences ripple outward. They touch not only the sinner, but generations beyond. If I could gather the years into my hands and press them to my heart, I would beg my younger self to see this truth. One choice may seem small, but its consequences may fill a lifetime. They may spill even into the lives of those yet unborn. Yet even in consequence, the Lord was merciful. He did not erase what was done, but he did not erase me either. He lifted me from the ashes, gave me a place in his story. That is the mystery I still cannot comprehend, how consequences remain, yet grace rises higher. Still, when I look back, it is not the crown I remember first, nor the throne beside David. It is the weight of consequence, how one night's choice reshaped my world. True beauty. My story does not end with sorrow, though sorrow shaped it. From the ashes of regret, the Lord brought forth wisdom, not only for me, but for every woman who will listen. I have walked the path of misused beauty, and I have tasted its bitter fruit. I have seen how quickly the gift meant to bless can turn into a snare. Beauty, left unguarded, can wound both the one who carries it and the ones who behold it. What was given as a reflection of God's goodness can become a mirror for vanity, a lure for sin, a stumbling stone in the way of righteousness. So I leave this as a remembrance for all who come after me. Do not trust in beauty. It is fleeting as morning dew, fading with time, fragile as the petals of a flower. To trust in it is to build your life upon shifting sand. Charm deceives, beauty vanishes, but the goodness of God endures forever. Instead, abide in chastity. Guard the purity of your heart and the modesty of your life. Let your adornment be not in outward form, nor in the praise of men, but in the hidden beauty of a gentle and faithful spirit. Such beauty does not fade, nor does it mislead, but it glorifies the Lord and strengthens those around you. I speak not as one who kept her steps perfectly, but as one who stumbled and yet was lifted by mercy. My failures testify to God's faithfulness. Even when my beauty was abused by me and others, He did not abandon me. Even when my name was shadowed by scandal, He wrote redemption into my story. From the womb that bore sorrow, He brought forth a beloved Son, the King of wisdom. God proved greater than my very shame, greater than my own abuse, greater than my eternal regret. Therefore, O daughters of Zion, adorn yourselves with holiness, for beauty without fear of God is vanity. Let your beauty serve God, not sin. Let it be a garment of grace, not a crown of pride. And if ever you are tempted to lean upon it for worth or power, remember me, Bathsheba, who trusted too long in what could not save, and who found her only refuge in the goodness of God. My beauty faded, but his mercy never did. My innocence was lost, but his redemption restored me. My name was stained, but his purpose endured. And so I say, hold fast not to the mirror of the world, but to the light of his word. Trust not in the fleeting glow of the face, but in the everlasting goodness of the Lord. For beauty will pass, but the fear of the Lord God on earth, and true beauties of holiness in New Jerusalem abide forever.